Yep. Yep, that's right. That's Ford Maverick in the shop. First Ford Maverick we've had here at Flip and Customize that we're going to be doing some modifications to. That's right, modifications to a Ford Maverick. So stay tuned. You're going to want to see this. If you have a Ford Maverick and you're looking to do some upgrades, well, today is your day right here. We have a 2022 Ford Maverick. It's a friend of mine, Jacob. We give him a lot of crap about this truck. Just a little bit of a backstory when he got it. And we're like, oh, it's hardly a truck. It's not a truck, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's a small, little, affordable, practical truck that's super good on fuel. We're just here today to try to help him make it a little more truck-looking, like, I guess. With that being said, we have a 2-inch rough country lift kit. First time we've installed one, so you're going to have to bear with me. On this one, it's just a spacer lift kit, but you got to take the struts out and all that, and then you got to put spacers in the rear as well. We've also got some rough country slimline lights that he wants in the back of this thing. If there's time, we're going to do a couple rough country seat covers as well as a tailgate assist for it as well. And then clearly down the road, he needs tires anyway. We're going to upgrade to at least whatever the recommended tire size for this lift kit is to go up at least one tire size, and it would look cool with some wheel spacers. So we will transform this little truck to make it a little bit more truck-like, a little tougher looking today. So thanks for hanging with us. Sorry for the long intro. Let's get into it. All right. In a nutshell, this is the Ford Maverick, the 2022. I think it's a 22, and I think it's the first year they came out. Here she be. She sits really, really low. They give a good ride. This is actually, I think it's the Lariat FX4. So this is a pretty loaded little truck. But today we're here to do the rough country lift kit. I've already got it in the shop. We're going to get it up in the air. We're going to get the wheels off. Before we do that, I believe there's some plastic crowd we got to get off to undo the upper strut mount. I think that's where you start. We start right in the front, and then we'll work our way back. This won't be a direct how-to, but we'll kind of take you through some really basic steps of what we're doing, just so you can see the end result. I think this lift kit will be a 4 to 5 hour install. Hopefully, and then clearly you'll need an alignment after that. I'll show you the lift now, and it's just the rough country right here. 2022 Ford Maverick 2-inch lift kit. We got spacers, so you do have to compress the strut in order to do this. So you want to make sure you have a strut compressor or access to one. And the rest is all spacers, but there's a lot of taking stuff apart to get to this stuff. And the lights themselves, these are actually cool. I have not installed these yet. They're actually a very slim line. I think they're 6 inches. And we're going to put them just below the bumper over here. It would look cool if it was over here, but the plate is kind of in the way on that side. So we will put it right over here. One on each side, one under the plate over there, and one right here. He's also got some decals that we're going to lay into the lettering when he comes and picks this thing up. So, yeah, pretty cool little truck. That's right, Steve. I said it. Pretty cool little truck. I did say little. All right, under the hood. So basically, you start under the hood. There are little clips. Look like this. They go right around the wiper crowl right there. So you pull all these clips off, and then it's kind of stuck with some sticky tape, but then you can lift this wiper crowl up, and there's a 10mm bolt behind my finger, actually, right there. Another one here, and it takes the strut cover off. They want you to do that before you even put the vehicle in the air, so then you can start working underneath. So we're gonna go ahead and pull these plastic covers off, get in the air, pull the wheels off, and then get into the, I think, sway bar link as well as the tie rod ends. All right, we are up in the air now with the Maverick, and what we've got to do basically, in a nutshell, is 15mm, disconnect the tie rod ends. Obviously, we're doing this on both sides. The sway bar link, we're going to take this off as well, because at the end of the day, this whole strut assembly has to come out and go into the strut compressor. So this is coming off, this coming off, the 2 bolts that hold the strut on. There's 3, I think, on the top that we're going to take off. The brake line bracket as well as the ABS line bracket. And then this whole assembly will push down, and we're going to pull this right out of here, and then we're going to get into compressing it. So let me strip all this off and get it to the point where the strut is coming out, and I'll show you. Before I go too far, I'm going to have a fresh baked muffin from my wife's farm stand, Pixie S Farm and Flour. And can I plug her farm stand on my YouTube? You bet I can. Pixie S Farm and Flour makes kick-ass baked goods. All right, I was getting carried away here, but we got the tie rod end is off. Sway bar link is off, ABS wire, brake line is off, and the lower bolts of the strut are out. So the strut right here is basically free, other than the 3 bolts holding it in the top. There's 1, 2, and then there's another one under there, so 3. So now we take those 3 out. We take the whole strut assembly out. We're going to bring it over here to the strut compressor, and then we're going to compress it. And by compressing it, we're going to remove the top hat, the top hat on the strut itself. And then we'll get into putting the spacers on and where they go. All right, we got our strut in the strut compressor. If you don't have one of these, you're gonna have to go to a shop or something that has one that can help you out and do this for you. And it can be dangerous, so just be aware of that. Basically, we compress the spring here and we've unloaded the top hat, so this is loose. I'm gonna go ahead and take this nut off of here and we'll be able to take the whole shock assembly right out of that spring. The spring will stay there. We're gonna add this Rough Country preload spacer. Basically, this goes in the bottom of where the spring is sitting, and then the rubber will go right on top of this, and then we put it right back together. So you're preloading the spring. In addition to that, I believe it's gonna get a spacer on the top as well to get the actual lift, I think. But for now, we're gonna get this in. All right, strut assembly is out. Disassemble, the spring is over there. You do have to pull the boot off to get to this. I think you can put it back on after, I think. No, actually, you know what? It might stay off. And then the spacer goes in, and then the factory isolator, we slide this assembly back in there and then get this thing tightened down. And that takes care of the preload as far as the strut gets reassembled. And then I think on top of the strut, and verifying the directions, that it gets a spacer. Yeah, it's the passenger side. We're working on we're working on the passenger side. So yeah, literally just a spacer on top and the new bolts that are gonna go through it. So that'll get on after that. All right, so here we go. Strut assembly is back together, preload spacer. This is the spacer that's gonna go on the top. You're gonna put the bolts with the heads that go up through first, and then bolt it down to the top like so. And then you don't forget, you've gotta grind this flange off right here. It does specify it in the directions. It's a clearance issue once you lift these things. So you wanna get that ground off, not into the structure, but once I get that ground, I'll kind of show you, you'll have a better idea of what we did. I'm gonna go ahead and bolt this on first. All right, you can see a better view of it here. We just ground the flange off the outer edge just for some clearance issue there. And it's grind to suit, so they're not real specific. Just make sure it fit, doesn't have any issues. So preload spacer's in, the spacer in the top is in. It comes with 2 studs, and then you will use a bolt. And so it's a little different than the stock assembly. So you're a nut, and then a bolt on this one. So I'm gonna put this back in on the passenger side. All right, and this is a perfect example of why we do these videos. They tell you to disconnect the sway bar links and everything when you're doing the lift. They never tell you to put it back on. They do in the rear, but they don't in the front. Clearly, you need to have that, and you got to put it back on. But it doesn't exactly go right back on. So I'm prying it. It's close, but it's not on. So I got a phone call into Rough Country. They're going to call me back. They are good. Their customer service is spot on. And let me know what their resolution to that is. Do you enforce this? You just force it down to get it in there, or they have a shorter link that should have been in the kit? I don't know, but stand by, I'll get back with you. Yeah, so basically a ton of prying to get this thing down far enough to get it back in. I happen to use a big old ratchet strap back to the lift, and it was really easy once I did that, but I don't know, that was, and they didn't even mention putting it back in. It goes right in now. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these tightened down. So they probably should fix that in the directions. All right, we got the upper strut bolts all torqued down. So remember, you have 2 studs with nuts, and we mark them when they're tight so we know it's a reference, and then 1 bolt. And once those are all tight, you can put these plastic caps back on as well. And then we're gonna go down here. We're going to put the tie rod back in, tighten these knuckle bolts down, and then I believe there's an ABS wire reroute. So I unplugged it, so we gotta get into that as well. So let me get the truck back in the air. All right, so what they want you to do is the ABS line right here. They want you to, the reason why you unplug it is they want you to reroute it underneath the brake line bracket instead of, see how it goes on top? So you're gonna unplug or undo the push connector here and this connector from the vehicle here, and you're gonna route it underneath the brake line bracket. Let me get that done. All right, here is a better view right here. So we routed it, took the ABS line, routed it under the bracket and in between the line right here. So come over here, it comes with this new bracket here, because this was sitting up in here where the ABS bracket was. And you take this off and you put this bracket they give you on there with a 3/8 push nut. And then you connect the ABS line back to here and then back in the factory mounts, plug it back in. And that is it for that. And then all I gotta do is bolt this brake line back here, and then the front end is done. All right, and once the front reroute for the ABS line is done and you're plugged back in, time to move on to the back. All right, here we are in the rear of the vehicle. And basically what you gotta do is undo the upper sway bar link on the rear, both sides, the lower shock bolt itself, and I believe this bolt as well. And basically, we're gonna swing this out of the way. There's a spacer that goes here, and there's some other spaces that we gotta do too. So let me do some reading. But in a nutshell, we're spacing down the rear as well. All right, guys, I went through the directions. This is kind of different for me anyway. I've not done anything like this one. But at the end of the day, we're putting a spacer down here and one above it. So one on each side of the spring. So naturally the spring has to come out. In order to do that, we got to loosen up the lower control arm, take out the shock bolt, loosen this. Eventually this is going to come out and swing down. Like I said, the sway bar length, so it will allow us to do that. And then this trailing arm, we're going to undo these two splash nuts here. So this won't be in our way. We're going to undo the trailing arms, and it comes with spacers, just because remember, we're pulling this whole thing down, so we want to be able to space this down as well. So it comes with these big old spacers right here and longer bolts for the trailing arms, and then just the spacers on the coil, top and bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and start taking this apart and kind of show you what I did. All right, guys, so I got the lower shock bolt out, the lower control arm bolt out. Basically, the spring is free now. We'll be able to push this down. I might have to undo some of these clips here and get that off. They don't mention that, but that would take some of the tension off that wire for the ABS. So we'll get rid of that, or that could be the park brake wire. And then we can get this spring out of here and put our spacers in. Then we're gonna go ahead and undo these bolts and put the spacers in on the trailing arms. And that's it for the rear, I believe. All right, coil springs out. So there's a spacer for the bottom and one for the top. And we'll get into that as far as which goes where when I get to that point. We're just not there. I did undo the bolts for the trailing arm. And what you're gonna do now is right in between, there's a spacer you're gonna install. It's these black spacers right here. They get installed between the trailing arm, and then you got a new bolt that you're gonna put in there and tighten down. That brings everything back down and allows your rear end to come down further. So I'm gonna get the spacers in on both sides, get that done, and then we'll get into putting the shims on the springs. All right, a little better view of the spacers that goes between the trailing arm and the frame. And the new bolts, you're gonna need a 21mm socket to tighten those down. So we'll go ahead and get these put in now. All right, guys, so you do wanna make sure you have the same orientation when you pull the spacers off the top and the bottom. So you take a paint marker and mark it. That's what we're gonna do, is mark that and mark this. And then the thicker spacer goes on the bottom and the thinner spacer goes on top, just like that. All right, spacers in top and bottom. Now we're gonna use a jack stand. You could use a floor jack, whatever, to push this back up in there and get this bolts back in. So yeah, got a little ways to go on that one. All right, both bottom bolts are in. And yes, it is hard to the point where jacking it up, you're basically taking the truck off the lift. So there's a fair amount of force on there, but we got it. All right, so we got the lift all installed. The 2-inch lift now, spacer lift, is completely installed on this Ford Maverick, front and rear. We just got to put the wheels back on and set it on the ground. However, since it's already up here and we're mounting these slimline lights, I'm going to go ahead and get those mounted and start running that wire into the front of the truck. And then I'll get back with you. It's not going to be a direct how-to on that. I can kind of show you where we mounted them and where we routed them as well. And then we can see what it looks like. All right, here we go. There's a Rough Country's Black Series. And actually, I think these are originally designed for their, like, not SUVs, but like ATVs and stuff. But actually, I like them this slim. I think I'm going to get a set for my skid steer. Comes with a full wiring harness. However, when you run them in the back of the vehicle, we may have to extend that. It might not be long enough. And we're just mounting them right up here, tuck them as close to the bumper as we can. So he has some good lighting back there. And it'll be on a switch, so it's not just on when reverse. He actually will turn them on. All right, got the two lights mounted. That looks pretty good. He's gonna get some good view from behind. I actually like that. Now we're gonna work on the wiring. So these are plug and play from here, and we're gonna head that way. All right, so definitely not long enough. That's the only problem when you do run these lights to the back, you're not gonna have enough wiring. So we will be extending their harness. I do like the harnesses, but I wish they'd give you a little more option with wires as far as length goes. All right, so I'm extending the wiring harness right here. As you can see, we got heat shrink, solder connectors here. We're gonna slide some heat shrink right over that, wrap them all up, and then we're gonna tuck them all up under here and run them to the front of the truck. But we got everything groomed out right now as far as the wires go. They're mounted, plugged in, and it's running over to here. And this is basically where you run out of wire. And then we gotta extend it. All right, so we're just about ready to put the wheels back on because we got the wiring run all the way up here, kind of turned up, went up the firewall, and I got it connected to the battery. And the relay is right in the fuse. Fuse is here, the relay's on the back side of the battery. And then this is the switch where we're gonna go into the truck Down in there, I don't know if you can see it, there's a rubber panel. Ooh, I lost my focus. Right down there. There's a little rubber panel. We're gonna go through there with the wiring for the switch. Bring that into the cab, and he's got lights. All right, guys, I had to put the wheels back on this thing. We're gonna stand on the ground because I can't get in the cab where I need to wire the switch in for the lights. So wheels are back on, I'll get them torqued. We're gonna set this thing on the ground and see what it looks like. Yeah. All right, we got the switch mounted on the left side here, right there's my finger. And they work. I'll show them to you. And because they're in the sun right now, but you can kind of see where we brought the wire in there. See that grommet? Right there. Put up the extra wire, tucked it up under here, and then routed in here where it's just column would tilt. So still clearance, it's not be an issue with that. So that's how we wired it up. All right, so now we got the lift in, and the lights are all wired up. We're gonna do the tailgate assist because this thing doesn't have it, so it just drops right down. It's kind of surprising it doesn't. So let me get that, and we'll throw that in, and then seat covers will be last, but he didn't ask me to do seat covers. I was just gonna throw them in there, but I've already got probably too much time into this thing. So he's probably gonna be doing the seat covers. But anyway, I can show them to you. All right, here we go. So basically you got it's basically like a hood strut, and you gotta take off, or Steve's taking off the upper bolt there, and then this is gonna kind of go in behind the upper bolt with the stud facing down. And I think the bolt goes in this one. I think it's this one, but I'll double check that. And then we get into the bottom bracket. All right, so the bottom bracket, as you can see, it's cut out right here, goes around that cup, and then it has its own little, what they call it, a flange nut. That's a fancy little name. It's gonna go into that hole there, and then once he puts it in, it's gonna turn and lock itself in there, and then just tighten it down. Then we just got our cylinder to put on there. Nice job, Steve, working on the Maverick. I'm gonna tell your friends. All right, and the last step is you're just gonna install the strut, and that just clips on, I believe, on each ball stud, one on top, one on the bottom. Then we test it. All right, it's installed. But one thing worth mentioning, I'm not even sure what this bracket is. I think it's a bed extension bracket. If your Ford Maverick has that, whatever side you're gonna install this thing on, you're gonna take that out of there, or it would hit the cylinder. So, basically, open her up. Nice slow drop, that's pretty slick. All right, and here's the rough country seat covers. I've done these and I've installed these on some different vehicles. They are actually really good seat covers. It's almost a neoprene type material, if it's the same that I've done on the Chevy trucks in the past. I've kind of run out of time for this video to go ahead and get those installed for the day because the sun be setting. And yeah, I want to wrap this up and show you what it looks like. All right, you ready? Here's the reveal. 2-inch lift, rough country Ford Maverick. Check it out. That actually changed the look of this truck quite a bit. It is a full 2 inches. Like, it lifted at a full 2 inches. I don't know if it was a full 2 in the rear because it had a little rake to it, but it actually looks a lot better. It sits like, I guess, in my opinion, how it should have sat from the factory. And then the lights are slim. They're down there, tucked below the bumper real nice. That's pretty cool. What I'll do is let me reach in here and turn them on. And so these are working when the truck is off, which is nice. So if he's down out back there working, doing something, he can have lighting back here. So those are pretty bright. Can't wait to see that at night. I'll have to have him send me some pictures. And he can adjust them and tweak them as he sees suits whatever he wants on that as well. So yeah, I mean, I think if you have a Ford Maverick, you want a budget lift, this would be it. I don't know, I think Rough Country probably has the full lift with the struts and everything. So if you have some miles and some age on your Maverick, and you got to take the strut all apart, you're better off just to go with the full lifted strut. If it's available from Rough Country. If it is, I'll drop a link in the description along with this kit as well. I'll drop a link for this kit with the tailgate assist as well and the seat covers. I'll have them all in the description for you. But that's it right there. That's the Ford Maverick with 2-inch lift. Now, when this comes back, we will be doing a slightly oversized tire and maybe some wheel spacers to get a little more of an aggressive stance. I think it would look nice with like an 1.5 inch spacer on there. But that's it. So that being said, we'll wrap this up. I want to thank you guys for watching. This is Scott with Flip and Customize. Today we did a 2022, I believe the first model year of the Ford Maverick, 2-inch rough country lift, some slim line rough country accessory lights, and the tailgate assist. And well, we didn't get to the seat covers, but it's a seat cover. They slide on and they're actually pretty durable, so check them out. Take care, guys.